He royal ship from the planet Zarnith arrived at Orion Station with no music, no lights, no welcome. It moved like a ghost through space, cold and silent. The Zarnithians were known across the galaxy for their logic, silence, and emotionless rule. They believed noise was weakness, emotion was a disease, music was a crime. Princess Alaya stood at the front of the ship, her hands behind her back. She was 19 cycles old, tall and graceful. Her silver-blue skin glowed softly under the ship's lights. Her eyes were violet, sharp, and cold. Her face showed no emotion, not even boredom. This was her first time visiting a human-controlled space. She didn't want to come. But her father, Emperor Velner, had given her a task: observe the humans, learn their ways, report their weaknesses. That was it. Short and simple, to Alaya. Humans were primitive, emotional, wild, unpredictable. Their culture was full of chaos, laughter, art, dancing, even war music. She had read their history. They came from one planet covered in water and noise. Somehow, they had survived long enough to reach the stars. But to the Zarnithians, they were still apes. As the ship docked at Orion Station, a neutral galactic outpost, Alaya's expression did not change. She stepped out of the airlock with perfect posture, her silver uniform spotless. 2 Zarnithian guards followed behind her. The station was loud. Alien voices echoed through the halls. Machines beeped and buzzed. Someone laughed. Someone else yelled. She flinched slightly, but didn't show it. The noise felt like insects crawling on her skin. Then a human approached. He had brown skin, short, messy hair, and a black jacket with a red design that read Led Zeppelin. He looked casual, unprofessional. He smiled. "Princess Alaya, right?" he asked. "Welcome to Orion Station. I'm Jox Carter. I'll be your guide while you're here." Alaya blinked slowly. You asked? "You are the representative of your species?" Jox shrugged. "Guess I drew the lucky straw. I expected someone more disciplined." He grinned. "Don't worry, your royal tallness. I clean up nice." She tilted her head. "Humans joke too much. It is unproductive." "Well," Jock said, turning around, "maybe that's why we're still alive." He walked ahead. She followed as they moved through the station. Jox kept talking. He pointed at food stalls, alien traders, music clubs, even a noodle bar. Elai didn't care. She scanned everything with her eyes, but showed no interest. "You don't like any of this, huh?" Jox asked. "Your culture is messy," she said. "Too loud, too colorful, too emotional." Jox raised an eyebrow. "You saying that like it's a bad thing." "Order is strength," she replied. "Chaos is weakness." He smiled again. "Maybe. Or maybe your people are just afraid of feeling something." Alaya stopped. "No," she said. "We evolved beyond emotion." "Did you?" Jox asked, walking backward now. "Or did you just run away from it?" She didn't answer. They reached a long hallway with fewer people. The lights were dimmer. Here, more quiet. "I have one last place to show you today," Jock said. "I've seen enough," Elia replied. "You haven't seen this," he said, pressing his hand to a door. It slid open with a hiss. Inside was a small room with black walls, soft chairs, and a strange machine at the center. "What is this place?" she asked. "A listening room," Jock said. Back in old Earth days, people used to sit in rooms like this just to hear music. Music is outlawed on Zarnith. "Yeah, I read that. Thought it was sad." Elia stepped inside carefully. The room was quiet, soft. Safe.jx walked to the machine and touched a few buttons. "I'm going to play you something," he said. "Something from Earth's past. One of our best." I did not agree to this. You didn't say no either, he smirked. She sighed. Fine, play your noise. Jock smiled like a child who had just opened a gift. He leaned down, pressed a final button, and said 2 words, Jimi Hendrix. Then the music began. It started. Slow, just a few notes from a guitar, twisting, crying. Then the drums joined, deep and full. A voice followed, full of pain and power. There must be some kind of way out of here. ... Alaya's body went still. Her eyes widened slightly. She had never heard anything like it. It wasn't just sound. It was feeling. The guitar screamed and danced like a storm trapped in metal. The drums were like heartbeats. The voice, raw, human, wounded, cut through her like a blade of fire. She didn't understand the words, not fully, but her body reacted. She felt heat rise to her cheeks. Her chest tightened. Her fingers curled. Something inside her broke open. What is this? She whispered. Jax was watching her. This, he said, is Hendrix. Alaya couldn't look away. Each note hit her like lightning. Each word made her feel something she couldn't name. Anger, wonder, longing, freedom. Her whole life. She was told to silence these things, but now they screamed to be free. When the song ended, the room fell silent again. She stood, frozen. Her eyes were moist. Her lips trembled. She touched her chest, confused. She started. I don't understand. Jock stepped closer. That's okay. You're not supposed to understand. You're supposed to feel it. I was not meant to feel. Maybe not, he said softly. But you just did. There was a long silence. Alaya turned away. This changes nothing, she said quickly, but her voice shook. Jocks didn't push her. Tour's over, he said. I'll see you tomorrow. She left the room fast, her steps no longer perfect. That night in her private quarters, Princess Alaya could not sleep. She played the sound in her head again and again. The guitar, the voice, the feeling. Something had cracked inside her. Something dangerous. Something beautiful and far away, alone in the dark, she whispered to herself. What else are humans hiding? Princess Alaya sat in her quiet room on Orion Station. The lights were dim. The floor was clean. The air was cold. Just like home. But something was wrong. Her fingers kept tapping the table. Her chest felt tight. Her thoughts were not still. She had heard something dangerous today, something powerful, something she was never meant to hear. Music, Jimi Hendrix. Even his name sounded strange. But that song, those sounds had entered her mind and refused to leave. On Zarnith, they taught that music was poison. Noise made the brain weak. Emotion caused disorder. Alaya had believed that all her life. But now she wasn't sure. She closed her eyes and tried to focus. Tried to meditate like she was trained, but in her mind, the guitar returned. There must be some kind of way out of here. ... Her heart beat faster. She stood up quickly, walked to the window, looked out at the stars. They were still cold and silent, but she wasn't. For the first time in her life, her silence was broken on the inside. She touched her chest. What was this feeling? Was it fear? No. Excitement? Maybe. Curiosity? Definitely. She remembered Jox's words. You're not supposed to understand it. You're supposed to feel it. Feel it. That was the part her people feared the most. Alaya looked at the door. She should rest. Tomorrow her report was due. She was supposed to meet with General Talvik, her father's top advisor, but something inside her whispered, go back to the room, the music room, just once more. She hesitated. Then she moved. The hallway was dark and empty. It was past station curfew, but Alaya moved fast and silent. Her royal status let her bypass most security. She reached the small black door. It opened with a soft hiss. The room was still there, still quiet, still waiting. She stepped inside, closed the door, and sat down. The same music machine stood in the middle. She pressed the same button Jocks had used. She remembered the name, Hendrix. The sound began again, and just like before, her body reacted. The guitar screamed like a storm. The drums shook her bones. The voice reached deep into her soul. She didn't cry, but her eyes were wet. Again, she wasn't broken. She was waking up. The next morning, Jocks Carter walked into the station lounge, holding a cup of coffee and humming a tune. His black jacket was half-zipped, and his boots were untied. He looked like someone who didn't care about rules, but his eyes noticed everything as he sipped his drink. He spotted Alaya walking toward him. She looked different today. Her steps were fast, not slow. Her face had color, not just control. Her eyes were alive. "You went back, didn't you?" Jocks asked, raising an eyebrow. Alaya stopped. "How did you know?" "Because you look like someone who heard Hendrix twice." She almost smiled, but stopped herself. "I don't understand," she said. "Why does it feel like this?" "My body is reacting in ways I can't control." "It's called emotion," Jocks said. "Humans live on it. But why music?" Jocks leaned back. "Because music speaks the language your heart already knows, even if your brain doesn't." Elia sat down next to him. "I listened to it again, 3 times. Nice, and I want more." Jocks grinned. "Now you're talking." That day, Jocks took her to the deeper parts of Orion's station places not on the official tour. Hidden rooms, old archives, abandoned clubs. Alaya saw paintings, sculptures, old Earth films. But what pulled her most was the music. J.X. played more songs, Queen, Pink Floyd, Bob Dylan. Each one hit her differently. One made her angry. One made her laugh. One made her cry. By the time they returned, hours had passed, and Princess Alaya was not the same. But someone else had noticed on the shadows above the station's upper levels. General Tovik watched her from a screen. He was tall, thin, and wore the black and silver armor of the Zarnethian High Guard. His eyes were cold and gray. His voice was sharper than a blade. He had been monitoring Alaya's movements. She was visiting human areas too often, spending time with an disciplined EARTH MAN, and most dangerous of all, entering the room of sound. Tavik's fingers tapped. On the console, he sent a message to Emperor Velner. "Your daughter is changing." That night, Alaya couldn't sleep again. She listened to more songs through a hidden device Jocks gave her. She moved her fingers in the air, following invisible rhythms. She whispered the words of a song under her breath, and for the first time in her life, she danced only a little, only alone. But she danced, and she smiled. Just once, but that one smile was more powerful than any weapon. The next day, she was called to a private chamber. She expected another tour, but instead, she found General Tovik waiting. He stood still like a statue. "Alaya," he said, "you have been behaving strangely." She stood straight. "I have followed my schedule. On the outside, yes. But inside," his voice lowered, "you have listened to music." She said nothing. Tovik stepped closer. "Do you know why our people banned it?" "Yes," she said. "Because emotion causes weakness." "No," he replied. "Because emotion causes rebellion." Alaya blinked. Tavik's voice was cold. "Music is not just sound. It is fire. It burns logic. It spreads like a virus. It makes people feel. And when they feel, they question. And when they question, they rise. Eli's heart beat faster. "You sound afraid," she said. "I sound wise," Tovik replied. "Return to your chambers. End contact with the human. If you do not," he paused, "I will end it for you." Elia turned to leave, but before the door closed, she said one quiet word: "No." In the hallway, she ran, not walked. Ran. She didn't care about posture or silence. She had to find Jocks. She had to warn him. But more than that, she had to hear more music. She didn't care if it was forbidden. She didn't care if it was dangerous. It was already inside her, and it would never leave. Princess Elia was no longer herself, at least not the self she had been before she heard Hendrix. Every morning she woke up thinking about the sound of that guitar. Every night she replayed the songs in her mind. Music had become part of her, like breath, like blood. She tried to act normal around her guards. She still wore her perfect uniform. She still walked with her head high and her back straight, but her eyes had changed. They were not cold anymore. They burned with something new. Feeling she avoided General Tovik. She had not seen him since he gave her the warning. "Stop listening, or I'll stop it for you." She should have listened, but she couldn't stop. JX Carter knew she would come back. He waited in the listening room every day, sipping his coffee, tapping his boots to silent beats. When Ela walked in the next day, he gave her a small smile. "You okay, princess?" "No," she said. "I think I am broken." He tilted his head. "What makes you say that?" "I cannot stop hearing the songs in my head," she said. "Even when I try to think about my duties, the music returns. It follows me like a shadow." Jocks nodded. "That's how you know it's working. I feel like I am changing." "You are." She sat down slowly. "I should be scared. Caillou?" She looked at him, then looked away. "I don't know." Jocks leaned forward. "You want more, don't you?" "Yes," she whispered. He grinned. "Then let's make it count." For the next 3 days, Elia returned to the music room in secret. Jocks brought new tracks each time. She listened to Aretha Franklin, the Rolling Stones, David Bowie, and even a wild band called Black Sabbath. Each sound pulled something different from inside her. Some songs made her cry without knowing why. Some made her fists clench with rage. Some made her want to scream. Others made her want to fly. One song, an old earth lullaby, made her curl into a chair and just sit still for an hour, eyes wide and heart full. She was experiencing centuries of human feeling in just a few days. Jocks didn't rush her. He didn't explain too much. He let the music speak, and it did. Louder than any lecture, stronger than any speech. But secrets don't stay secret forever. In the shadows of the station, small black drones floated silently. They had no eyes, but they saw everything. General Tovik was watching. He saw Elia's visits. He heard the music she listened to. He watched her face change. He knew the infection was spreading, and he decided it was time to act. That night, Elia returned to her quarters. She hid a small music device under her bed, something Jocks had given her. It contained hundreds of Earth songs, all stored on a tiny black chip. It was her treasure now, a secret. She listened to a song by a man called Johnny Cash as she brushed her hair. She was humming softly when her door opened without warning. 4 guards entered. Behind them stood General 2Vek. He looked calm to calm. "Elia," he said, "you have disobeyed a direct order from the High Command." She stood up quickly. "This is a mistake." "No," he said. "The mistake was letting you leave Zarnath in the first place." One of the guards stepped forward and grabbed the music chip. "No," Elia shouted. The guard crushed it in his hand. Gasped as if her heart had been torn out. Taveg's voice was like ice. From this moment, you are confined to your chambers. You will not see the human again. You will not leave without permission. You will be examined and corrected by Zarnithian doctors. I'm not sick, she said. You are infected with emotion. I'm alive. He stepped closer. You are a princess, not a human, not a singer, not a fan. Elia's voice shook, but she stood tall. I will not be silent again. You have no choice. The guards turned. The door closed. She was locked in, alone, without music. Jocks waited the next day and the day after. But Elia didn't come. He tried sending her messages, nothing. He asked around. No one would tell him anything. Finally, he went to the edge of the Zarnithian sector of the station, but he was blocked. Royal zone, the guard said. Authorized access only. Jocks clenched his fists. He knew something had happened, and he was going to fix it. Inside her room, Elia sat on the floor, her back against the cold wall. She had not eaten in a day. Her thoughts were spinning. The silence hurt now. It wasn't peaceful, it was punishment. She whispered songs to herself, trying to remember the words, but they were fading. She was forgetting the sound of Hendrix. That scared her more than anything. She closed her eyes and saw Joxy's face. She missed his laugh, his calm voice, his stupid jacket. She missed the music. And then, a soft beep. A message appeared on her wall screen. It was scrambled, low quality, but the voice was clear. Hey, princess. I know they locked you up, but I'm not giving up. I've got a plan. Tomorrow, midnight, be ready. Her eyes widened. A real smile formed on her lips. Hope had returned at exactly midnight. Her wall panel flickered again. A second message appeared. This time, it was not just a voice, it was music. Low volume, just one song. But it was the one that started everything, all along the watchtower. By Jimi Hendrix. The guitar screamed again. The voice came alive. Tears ran down Eli's cheeks. She wasn't broken. She was awake, and tomorrow night, she would be free. The lights were low across Orion Station. Midnight came quietly, but something electric was in the air in her locked chamber. Princess Elia stood by the door. Her heart beat fast, stronger than it ever had. In her ear, a small hidden device played the quiet voice of Jocks Carter. Hallway C-17. Use the old maintenance shaft. I'll meet you near the power core. Her fingers shook, not from fear, from excitement. She was about to break every law of her world, but this time, she didn't care. Getting out of her room was easier than she thought. The Zarnithian guards had grown lazy, thinking the princess was under control again. Her training in silent movement helped her slip past the door sensors, down the hall. Around the corner, every step was like a drumbeat, her first taste of real rebellion. She reached the maintenance. Shaft Jocks had mentioned it was old, dusty, and narrow. She climbed inside. Crawling through darkness, metal scraped her arms. Her legs ached. But she kept going. She had to. Jocks was waiting near the power core. He wore dark clothes and had a tool belt over his shoulder. When Elia dropped out of the vent above him, he caught her with both hands. Told you I'd get you out, he whispered. She didn't smile, but she looked him in the eyes and said, I knew you would. He handed her a small bag. Got you something? Inside were tiny music players, dozens of Earth songs on one chip. He had even built a small speaker using scrap parts. Elia held it like a treasure. Thank you. Jocks gave her a quick nod. We're not done yet. They moved fast. JX led her through the lowest levels of the station, through steam tunnels, hidden doors, and back alleys full of old machines. Where are we going? Elia asked. to a room most people forgot about, Jock said. Used to be an old signal bay. Now, it's a perfect place to send a message. A message to who? Jocks grinned. To the whole galaxy. Back in the Zarnethian sector, General Tavik stood in front of the empty chamber. The guards were nervous. She was just here an hour ago. One said. Tavik didn't respond. He stared at the broken lock, at the empty bed, at the missing princess. She's with the human, he said finally. He tapped a device on his wrist, sealed the station. No one enters, no one leaves. And find her? His voice dropped to a growl. Bring her back, or bring her in pieces. Alaya and Jocks reached the old signal room. Dust floated in the air. Lights flickered. Broken consoles lined the walls. In the center, a single working transmitter still hummed. Jocks began working fast, connecting wires, activating old systems. What are you doing? Alaya asked. Broadcast system, he said. Not just inside the station. This baby can send signals across 3 star systems. Why would you do that? He looked up to show the galaxy what music can do. Alaya stepped back. That's dangerous. Yep, Jock said. But you said it yourself, music changed you. What if it can change others too? Alaya hesitated. If they were caught, she would be executed. Jocks too, but she'd already changed. She had already crossed the line. And maybe others needed to feel what she had felt. I will speak, she said softly. JX smiled. Ladies first. They turned on the mic. The signal was live to all listening stations. 2 alien ships, 2 human colonies. 2 Zarneth itself. Alaya stepped forward. This is Princess Alaya of Zarneth, she said. Her voice was calm but strong. I was taught. That silence was power. That emotion was weakness. That music was poison. She paused. I now believe that was a lie. In rooms across the galaxy, listeners froze. Some recognized her voice. Others leaned closer. I heard something called music. I was changed. Not controlled, not broken, but awakened. Jocks pressed a button. Soft music played in the background. Hendrix again. Alaya's voice continued. This is not a weapon. It is a key, a way to feel, to connect, to be alive. Then, Jocks leaned into the mic. To anyone listening, this is what the Zarnethian Empire fears. Not bombs, not war, but a guitar. He turned up the volume. The station shook with sound. Not from attack, from music in the dance clubs. Aliens stopped moving in, then started dancing again with more passion in control rooms. Old officers wiped their eyes, not knowing why. On Zarneth, the Emperor crushed a glass in his hand, and General Tovik screamed, "Find them now." Guards moved quickly. Doors slammed, scanners searched. Finally, the location was found. Power room, lower decks, old signal bay. Tovik sent the full unit. Bring me the human's heart, he said. Inside the signal room, red lights flashed. Jocks saw it on the screen. They're coming, he said. Alaya nodded. Then we play one more. They turned the music louder. This time it was Led Zeppelin. The room shook with energy. Outside, soldiers ran through the hallways. Inside, Eli closed her eyes and let the music surround her. Even if this was the end, it was a good way to go. But then another signal appeared. Ships, not Zarnethian, not Hume. Alien traders, listeners, explorers. They were answering the call. Some came with weapons, others came with instruments. But they all came as the Zarnethian. Troops reached the door. They were blocked, not by guns, but by a wall of aliens, each holding a player or a speaker, or just standing in silence. Music had united them, and no army could fight a galaxy that had started to feel inside. Jocks and Elia. "Heard the noise outside? What's happening?" she asked. Jax smiled wide. "I think we just started a revolution." Orion Station was no longer quiet. It used to be just another spaceport, cold metal walls, blinking lights, and routine traffic between alien ships. But now, music echoed through the corridors. Guitars screamed, voices cried out, drums beat like thunder. And at the center of it all stood Princess Ellie Once, the quiet daughter of Zarnith. Now the voice of something new. Beside her, Jox Carter smiled as the sound of Hendrix filled the air. There must be some kind of way out of here. And now, there was. The broadcast had reached farther than they expected. Within hours, thousands of alien ships tuned in. Some came to listen, some came to support, and some came to fight. But not with weapons, with sound. One alien species arrived with floating instruments shaped like glowing flowers. Another brought drums that shook the floor like earthquakes. Some played, some danced, others just stood quietly, tears running down their cheeks. No one had ever seen the galaxy like this before, all united by music. Inside the command deck of the Zarnithian warcruiser, General Tovik watched in horror. The station was now surrounded by over 300 ships, none of them under Zarnith control. He slammed his fist on the table. "This is a virus," he growled. "A disease, and it must be destroyed." A soldier turned to him. "Orders, sir." Tovik narrowed his eyes. "Prepare to launch sound nullifiers. We will silence them all." Back inside the station, Elia and Jox worked fast. With help from alien engineers and rogue technicians, they were building something. Not a weapon, not a bomb, but a giant amplifier, one big enough to shake the stars. "What if they jam the signal?" Elia asked. "Then we turn it up louder," Jox said with a grin. Elia nodded, her violet eyes full of fire. No more silence. Suddenly, alarms blared. Tovik's voice boomed through the station's speakers. "To all life forms aboard Orion. Station, this is General Tovik of Zarnith. You are harboring traitors. Turn them over, now war be punished." No one moved. Then Tovik's voice continued. "You have 10 minutes. After that, we silence the station forever." The music stopped. Silence returned. A deep, cold silence. Elia looked at Jox. "We don't have much time. Then we make it." "Count," he said, connecting the last wire. She stepped up to the mic one more time. The amplifier was ready. The signal was open. The clock was ticking. "Citizens of the galaxy," Elia said, her voice echoing across systems. "My name is Elia, of Zarnith. I was raised in silence, trained in control. Taught that emotion was weakness and music was poison." She paused. "I believed it until I heard the truth." Behind her, Jox played a slow guitar riff, soft but strong. Elia continued. "They told me humans were primitive, but it was their music that woke me up. Their chaos that brought me peace." Now the amplifier kicked in. Jox turned up the volume. Hendrix roared to life. The guitar blasted across space. The drums crashed like meteors. The voice soared through every speaker. Every ship, every year, ships shook, hearts raced, and far away. The warships of Zarnith began to tremble. On board the main cruiser, General Tovik shouted, "Launch the nullifiers." Now, his soldiers fired sonic weapons toward the station, huge machines, meant to kill all sound within seconds. But something strange happened. The waves hit the station walls and bounced back. Jax laughed. "Told you old tech can be stronger." This station was built before sound nullifiers were invented. The old metal, the analog systems, they had saved them. Elia turned to the crowd gathered around. "Let it play," she shouted. Let the galaxy hear what they tried to hide. Aliens cheered, drums pounded, voices rose in 1,000. Different languages that the Hendrix Rebellion had begun. On the Zarnethian cruiser, panic spread. Tovik watched as some of his own soldiers took off their helmets. One of them was crying. "What are you doing?" Tovik shouted. The soldier looked at him. "I heard the music." He whispered, then he dropped his weapon and walked away. Another followed, and another. One by one. The crew disobeyed. Tovik stood alone, back. In the signal room, Elia listened to the last note fade. Then came silence. But this time, it wasn't cold, it was warm. A silence full of meaning. A silence after the storm. Then, a new sound, clapping, hundreds of hands. Thousands of voices, cheers, cries, joy. Elia stepped back from the mic. JX put a hand on her shoulder. "You just changed." "History," he said. She looked at him, smiling for real this time. "No," she said. "We just changed everything." That night, Orion Station didn't sleep. It sang, danced, played from every corner of the galaxy. People sent messages back. Some offered protection, some offered music of their own, and others simply said, "Thank you." In a dark corner of the universe, Emperor Velnor watched the recordings. His face was stone. Beside him, another commander spoke. "What shall we do, my lord?" The Emperor did not answer. He stared at the image of his daughter, smiling dot in her new room aboard the station. Elia sat cross-legged. JAX handed her a small old machine, something called a cassette player. Inside was a new tape. More music, more feelings. She pressed play, and as the first notes of Hendrix began again, she whispered, "I will never be silent again." The galaxy was watching. News of the Hendrix Rebellion had spread across hundreds of systems. On Orion Station, music still played, and aliens still danced, but on Zarneth, there was silence. The rulers were furious. They called it a crime. A crime of noise. A crime of rebellion. And so, the High Council of Zarneth called for a trial. Not just any trial. One that would be broadcast live across the stars. They wanted to make an example of Princess Elia and the human, Jox Carter. The courtroom was built inside a silver dome. Floating in space, alien ships surrounded it like a swarm of bees. Inside, the walls pulsed with light, cold, judging, watching. The judges were tall beings of Zarneth, cloaked in white. Faces hidden by silver masks. They sat above everyone. UNMOVING.ELAY stood in the center, wearing a simple black suit. Beside her, Jox wore his Earth jacket, and his guitar slung on his back. They looked small, but they stood tall. The head judge's voice echoed through the dome. "Princess Elia of Zarneth, Jox Carter of Earth, you are charged with the following crimes: spreading noise across sovereign systems, encouraging rebellion through sound, disobeying royal command, bringing shame to the royal house of Zarneth." Elia said nothing. Jox crossed his arms. The judge continued, "How do you plead?" Jox leaned in and whispered, "Do we go dramatic or polite?" Elia stepped forward and said calmly, "We plead true. Because everything we did for freedom." The court gasped. The prosecutor, a tall Zarnethian woman with ice blue skin, stepped up. She pointed at Elia. "You are a royal, a daughter of Zarneth. You were trusted with peace. With silence, instead, you brought chaos, noise." She turned to Jox. "And you, a human from a primitive planet. You infected her with your music. You turned her against her own people." Jox smirked. "I didn't turn her. She woke up." The prosecutor ignored him. This trial is not about music, it is about control. Without silence, there is no order. Without order, there is war. She turned back to the judges, find them guilty, and silence them forever. Now it was Elia's turn. She stepped forward. Her voice steady. I was born into silence. I followed every rule, every command. I was told silence made us stronger. She looked around the room. But I was never happy. I was never whole. Her voice rose. The first time I heard music, I didn't understand it, but I felt it. For the first time in my life, I felt alive. Jocks nodded slowly. Elia continued. You say silence is order, but maybe it's fear, maybe it's control, and maybe it's time for change. The courtroom went quiet. Even the judges didn't move. Then the judge said, Do you have anything more to offer before we decide? Jocks stepped forward. Yeah, we have something. Evidence. He pulled out his guitar. The prosecutor shouted, Objection. That's an instrument of chaos. The judge raised a hand. Let him play. The courtroom held its breath. Jock sat on a stool. He took a deep breath and began to play. He played a soft, simple melody. It wasn't Hendrix this time. It was something. Gentle, peaceful. The kind of music that made you think of sunlight, green trees, and wind. No words, just sound. Just emotion. Alien diplomats looked at each other. Some blinked, some wiped their eyes. Even one of the judges shifted slightly. JX stopped. Playing? He looked up. That's the truth. That's what you want to destroy. Then Elia walked to the center. My people fear emotion. They fear sound. But we cannot live in fear forever. She looked at the judges. You can silence us. You can lock us away. But you cannot stop music. It will find a way. There was silence again, but this time it felt different. Heavy, like the whole galaxy was waiting. Then the head judge spoke. You are guilty. Gasps echoed, but the judge raised a hand. Guilty. Of disobedience, of rebellion, of change. He paused, but change is not always wrong. Everyone froze. You are sentenced to freedom. Confused murmurs filled the room. The judge continued. You are no longer part of the royal family. Elia, your title is gone. But your voice, your choice, is your own. He looked at Jocks. You are free to go, but beware. Change brings enemies. Ela smiled. She turned to Jocks. I never wanted to be a princess. I just wanted to feel. He grinned. Welcome to the band. As they walked out of the courtroom, a reporter called out, Princess Elia, what will you do now? She stopped. I'm not a princess anymore. She looked up at the stars. I'm a voice. That night, they left the trial dome back on Orion Station. They were welcomed like heroes. But the real victory wasn't the trial, it was the message. Across the galaxy, more aliens started to play music. Old songs, new sounds. No more silence, not. Everywhere, the sound of rebellion had begun, and Elia, she picked up her mic and said only 2 words before the music started. Play loud. The galaxy was watching. News of the Hendrix rebellion had spread across hundreds of systems. On Orion Station, music still played, and aliens still danced, but on Zarneth, there was silence. The rulers were furious. They called it a crime. A crime of noise. A crime of rebellion. And so, the High Council of Zarneth called for a trial. Not just any trial. One that would be broadcast live across the stars. They wanted to make an example of Princess Elia and the human, Jocks Carter. The courtroom was built inside a silver dome. Floating in space, alien ships surrounded it like a swarm of bees. Inside, the walls pulsed with light, cold, judging, watching. The judges were tall beings of Zarnith, cloaked in white, faces hidden by silver masks. They sat above everyone. UNMOVING.ELAY stood in the center, wearing a simple black suit. Beside her, Jocks wore his earth jacket, and his guitar slung on his back. They looked small, but they stood tall. The head judge's voice echoed through the dome. Princess Alaya of Zarnith. Jocks Carter of Earth, you are charged with the following crimes: spreading noise across sovereign systems, encouraging rebellion through sound, disobeying royal command, bringing shame to the royal house of Zarnith. Alaya said nothing. Jocks crossed his arms. The judge continued, how do you plead? Jocks leaned in and whispered, do we go dramatic or polite? Alaya stepped forward and said calmly, we plead true, because everything we did for freedom. The court gasped. The prosecutor, a tall Zarnithian woman with ice blue skin, stepped up. She pointed at Alaya. You are a royal, a daughter of Zarnith. You were trusted with peace, with silence. Instead, you brought chaos, noise. She turned to Jocks. And you, a human from a primitive planet, you infected her with your music. You turned her against her own people. Jocks smirked. I didn't turn her. She woke up. The prosecutor ignored him. This trial is not about music. It is about control. Without silence, there is no order. Without order, there is war. She turned back to the judges. Find them guilty and silence them forever. Now it was Elia's turn. She stepped forward, her voice steady. I was born into silence. I followed every rule, every command. I was told silence made us stronger. She looked around the room. But I was never happy. I was never whole. Her voice rose. The first time I heard music, I didn't understand it, but I felt it. For the first time in my life, I felt alive. Jocks nodded slowly. Alaya continued. You say silence is order, but maybe it's fear. Maybe it's control. And maybe it's time for change. The courtroom went quiet. Even the judges didn't move. Then the judge said, do you have anything more to offer before we decide? Jocks stepped forward. Yeah, we have something. Evidence. He pulled out his guitar. The prosecutor shouted, objection. That's an instrument of chaos. The judge raised a hand. Let him play. The courtroom held its breath. Jocks sat on a stool. He took a deep breath and began to play. He played a soft, simple melody. It wasn't Hendrix this time. It was something gentle, peaceful, the kind of music that made you think of sunlight, green trees, and wind. No words, just sound, just emotion. Alien diplomats looked at each other. Some blinked, some wiped their eyes. Even one of the judges shifted slightly. JX stopped playing. He looked up. That's the truth. That's what you want to destroy. Then Alaya walked to the center. My people fear emotion. They fear sound. But we cannot live in fear forever. She looked at the judges. You can silence us. You can lock us away. But you cannot stop music. It will find a way. There was silence again, but this time it felt different. Heavy, like the whole galaxy was waiting. Then the head judge spoke. You are guilty. Gasps echoed, but the judge raised a hand. Guilty. Of disobedience, of rebellion, of change. He paused. But change is not always wrong. Everyone froze. You are sentenced to freedom. Confused murmurs filled the room. The judge continued. You are no longer part of the royal family. Alaya, your title is gone. But your voice, your choice, is your own. He looked at Jocks. You are free to go, but beware. Change brings enemies. Ela smiled. She turned to Jocks. I never wanted to be a princess. I just wanted to feel. He grinned. Welcome to the band. As they walked out of the courtroom, a reporter called out, Princess Elia, what will you do now? She stopped. I'm not a princess anymore. She looked up at the stars. I'm a voice. That night, they left the trial dome back on Orion Station. They were welcomed like heroes. But the real victory wasn't the trial, it was the message. Across the galaxy, more aliens started to play music. Old songs, new sounds. No more silence, not. Everywhere, the sound of rebellion had begun, and Elia, she picked up her mic and said only 2 words before the music started. Play loud. The galaxy was no longer silent. In the far corners of space-on ice planets, desert moons, and space stations, something new was rising. Music, people, played guitars in dark alleys. Aliens made drums from old engine parts. Even some royal Zarnethians started listening in secret. The sound Jocks and Elia had shared was spreading, and some were not happy about it. The rulers of Zarneth were furious. The High Council had hoped that the trial would crush the movement, but it had done the opposite. Now, millions followed the sound rebels. Elia, the X-Princess.JAX, the Earth Boy with the guitar. They were now symbols, legends. Some called them criminals. Others called them heroes. Elia sat on the rooftop of Orion Station, watching the stars. Jocks sat beside her, tuning his guitar. A small radio played beside them. The signal was weak, but it worked. A voice crackled through. This is the free voice, broadcasting from the moons of Talos. Tonight's track, Starfire, by Elia and the Hendrix Rebels. Elia smiled. Can you believe this, Jocks? They're calling us a band now. Jocks grinned. I always wanted to be in a band. Never thought it would be with an alien princess, and half the galaxy watching. They laughed. But it didn't last, because deep in space, Zarneth was planning something big. An old warship appeared near Orion Station. The next day, Zarneth's flag flew high. Its message was clear. You have 1 cycle 24 hours to stop all transmissions, or we silence them ourselves. Elia stood before the crowd. Alien traders, human engineers, robot mechanics, and refugees all watched her. They want to scare us, she said. They want us to be quiet again. But we are not going back to silence. The crowd shouted. In agreement, so let them come, she said. Let them hear what we have to say. We'll answer with sound. That night, a massive concert was planned, the biggest the galaxy had ever seen. Orion Station's center dome was turned into a giant stage. Lights flashed across the stars. Speakers were set up on every wall. They called it the Sound of Freedom. Jocks, plugged in his guitar, Elia held the mic. Around them stood a band of aliens, humans and machines. Drummers from Mars, singers from Venus, even a robotic violinist from the icy moon of Neera. Then the Zarneth ship arrived. It pointed its weapons. At the station, a voice boomed from the speakers. Final warning. Stop the noise, or be destroyed. Jocks looked at Elia. You sure about this? She nodded. Let's make history. And with that, the first chord was played. The music hit the stars like lightning, loud, fast, alive. It was a mix of old Earth, rock and alien beats, guitar riffs like fire, drums like thunder, and Elia's voice, sharp and beautiful. She didn't sing about war. She sang about freedom, about feeling, about breaking the silence. The people danced, cried, sang, even. Watching from other systems felt something awakened. Inside the Zarnith ship, the captain was confused. The crew stood frozen, listening. One soldier whispered, "What is this feeling?" Another had tears in his eyes. Then the captain ordered, "Fire." But nothing happened. The weapons had powered down. A young Zarnith officer had pulled the plug. "No more silence," he said. Across Zarnith ships, soldiers hesitated. Some dropped their weapons, some began to hum. The sound was winning. Back on Orion Station, Alaya looked into the crowd. A group of young Zarnithians had arrived. They wore robes of peace, not war. One of them stepped forward and shouted, "We are with you." "Elia, let music live." The dome exploded with cheers. JAX played louder. The stage shook with power. The stars danced. That night changed the galaxy. The rulers of Zarnith lost control. The silence they had forced for generations was broken. Not with war, not with bombs, but with sound. Weeks later, a message was sent from Zarnith. "We accept the sound accord. Each system may choose its way. Silence or song freedom is now law." Elia and Jox became legends, not kings. Not rulers, just voices. Voices that helped others find their own. Their music was recorded and sent across galaxies. Schools taught the Hendrix moment as the turning point in cultural history. And Hendrix, he became more than a musician. He became a symbol of power, of emotion, of being human. Years passed. Alaya sat in a small studio on Earth. She was older now, wiser, but her eyes still sparkled like stars. A young alien girl sat beside her, holding a guitar. "Is it true," the girl asked, "that you were a princess once?" Alaya smiled. "Yes, but being a singer is much more fun." The girl laughed. "And is it true that one song changed everything?" Alaya nodded slowly. "Yes. One song, one moment, one choice." She looked out the window, where a new band was practicing. Music is a weapon. Not to destroy, but to wake us up. The girl looked at her guitar. "Can I be like you?" Alaya stood up. "You can be better." And somewhere, deep in space, a signal played on repeat. The sound of a guitar, the voice of a girl, the birth of freedom, and in every corner of the galaxy, someone was listening. The end.